Welcome to Wild, Women in Lending Determined to Make an Impact. I'm your host, Robyn LaVassaur. They say our biggest fear isn't being inadequate. It's being powerful beyond measure. In this podcast, I will share how to break through imaginary ceilings, lean into success, discovering your purpose, and understanding how to create the business and life of your dreams. From failures to triumphs and all the tactics in between, let's jump into the wild arena together. Welcome back to Wild with Robyn LaVassaur. We are going to talk today about how powerful problems are in your business. Thank goodness problems exist in the world, because if we're being honest, if the world was good all the time, it wouldn't need us. And loans are hard. They are riddled with problems. Problems from how everybody communicates, problems to how the purchase agreement might be written, problems on the timing of when everybody needs to move and how they would get moved, problems with qualifying, problems with credit, you name it, there is no shortage of problems in lending. And here's what's interesting. So many people try to find a way to make problems go away. And I would challenge you that actually is doing yourself, your team members, your company a disservice. Because if there were no problems, there would be no need for loan officers. If there were no problems in real estate, there'd be no need for realtors. If there were no problems in insurance, there would be no need for human insurance agents. And yet, problems exist all around us, and we try to fight them off, swear they're not going to happen again, make it to where they distract us, they sometimes paralyze us, and they ultimately make us look bad, even though we know they're coming, even though we know they're unavoidable. And so how do you prospect, essentially? How do you give power to problems where they become a positive part of your business? I hope that this podcast literally shows you a few step-by-step tactics and scenarios where you say the same things that I say now in my business. I didn't for the entire 27 years I was in the business, where you actually say to yourself, yes, there's a problem, which means I have an opportunity to shine. I have an opportunity to be valuable. So I'll give you a few different pieces to the puzzle. One, when it comes to problem solving in general, first have to identify the problem and don't get so fixated on whose fault it is. I think the moment problems arise, everybody is looking for whose fault it actually is. Wrong decision. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. It matters that there's a problem and people wonder how and who is going to fix it. And so being the person that raises their hand first and says, I have a solution, gives you incredible power and strength in the business in general. Because I don't know about you, if I'm in the midst of a hurricane and somebody raises their hand and says, I know what to do, follow me, I'm like, great, there's a leader. I'm in, right? How do I follow them? And so there is so much power in being the one who says, I don't care whose fault it is or how it happened. I care that we need to come up with a solution immediately, and I'm going to be the one to raise my hand and be the problem solver. What you also get to be is the problem communicator. If you think about calling a buyer's agent, and let's say you have to ask for an extension of some sort, doesn't matter whose fault, it doesn't matter why it happened, you need the extension. You know you need the extension. It's unavoidable to have a smooth closing, so you're asking for the extension. The general rule of thumb, beyond sometimes a paycheck or some panic, is the buyer's agent amount of extra work that they have to do to call the listing agent, who maybe has already been emotional. Maybe they've already had a tough inspection period, right? And the listing agent's emotional, and oh wait, those sellers are really hard to deal with. They're theirs, or they've got some circumstances we're unaware of. And so whenever you become the problem-solving communicator, I want you to take it steps further than you likely already do in your business. And that is offering to be the communicator to all parties involved in the transaction. I'll talk to the buyer myself. I'll talk to the seller myself. I'll talk to the listing agent myself. I'll talk to the buyer's agent myself. I'll talk to escrow or the attorney myself. Whoever is involved and engaged in the transaction, I will be the nucleus of all communication, so that, one, emotions don't get out of control. I control the narrative at that point. I'm also fully aware of what everyone has going on. I can't tell you how many times in my career somebody has said to me, they've already got a moving truck booked. And then I talk to the buyers and they don't have a moving truck booked. Or the sellers, they don't have a moving truck booked. When you control all the communication, you also control all the ability to listen and to find things out and to ultimately, hopefully, dissipate the fears or the narrative that a lot of people write where they're going to be so mad, That client's going to be so upset by what you just had us do. They're going to be so frustrated with this. They're going to be disappointed. Well, when you yourself say, you know what, I'll take that phone call. I'm able to talk to the client. I'm able to talk to that seller. I'm able to talk to that listing agent. And none of them ended up mad. Maybe a little disappointed, but not mad. They understood. They were okay with the game plan. They didn't have any other plans. You take all that negative narrative power away from maybe the person that was freaking out about it, and you say, I'll handle it. I'll tackle it. I'll take it on the chin if they are mad, and I'll listen to someone maybe yell. Side note, don't ever let somebody yell at you with cuss words or your team. Make sure that you're protecting everybody from that. I always tell people if that's that heated in any given moment, and sometimes lending in real estate can get people that heated, that stressed out. Hey, this is no longer productive. Let's take a breather and get back on the phone when we can have a grown-up conversation. And then we just hang up and we circle back as soon as everybody's ready to be called. And again, we stay centered. We stay focused. We stay empathetic and acknowledging that there is a problem and ultimately giving next steps. Now, does that mean you have to come immediately with, I know it's going to be okay if you don't really know it's going to be okay? No. You just have to come with next steps of when you communicate next, when people will have answers, what needs to happen in all of those spaces. And if you're the masterful communicator, there is a huge win in that itself. I will tell you, I had an agent that actually used me a whole bunch and we're dear friends. And she actually ended up using quite a few other lenders. We had a couple bumpy transactions. Bumpy for a lot of reasons. Again, doesn't matter who's to blame or what's at fault or how it happened. It happened at the end of the day. So my extreme ownership with it was being that masterful communicator, the one who was willing to own it and say, I'll hold the solutions. And she ended up circling back to me after probably 6 to 9 months of not really using me. And we were talking on the phone and I said, I just can't tell you how grateful I am that we're getting to work on a transaction again. I've missed you. I just think you're a phenomenal agent. And I was so bummed. And she said, you know what I've learned, Robyn? There are problems all over lending, but the way you tackle them is better than anybody else. There is so much power in being the problem solver. In fact, welcoming a problem into your everyday life and saying, man, now I get to use some of my skills. I get to learn and develop new skills. I get to show other people a path of how to embrace a problem and ultimately solve it and be glad that it was there and that we could add value and work together, because everything at the end of the day happens for a reason. And there are things that you can take that are really, really ugly, if you will, and turn them into something really beautiful. And does that mean that people weren't frustrated that maybe the closing got pushed out? No, it doesn't mean they're not frustrated. But when you have the ability to listen, to openly say, I'm sorry this is harder than we thought it would be. I'm sorry that you're disappointed. I'm sorry that this has been more disruptive than we expected. That doesn't always mean you're saying it's my fault, or it's your company's fault, it's your company's fault. It means that you're empathetic to somebody else's needs and the disruption that was just caused in their life. And one of the big mistakes around problems is that people tend to throw money at it, or they throw defense at it, if you will, and they don't really take the time to truly pick up the phone, right? You don't ever text a problem. You don't email a problem. At a bare minimum, you call and speak live. And ideally, you might even see people face to face. And not only do you do that, but you add a little something extra. I remember being at a restaurant and our food didn't come out on time. They missed one of the orders, just one. And they ended up bringing out a really nice dessert tray that was just so kind. And the truth was, the food came out a few minutes later. It wasn't the end of the world. We weren't overly angry. They didn't blame at all. They just said, I'm so sorry it happened. I own it completely. Let me get you taken care of in that space. They didn't say, all right, nobody gets charged for any of their meals. They simply brought out a really nice dessert at the end and said, hey, here's a little extra something for the mishap that we had earlier. Thank you for your grace and gratitude, right? And so acknowledgement, even with a little, hey, go to the movies, clients, this week. Where's your favorite place to have dinner? Let me buy you and your family some dinner in light of all of this stress. Hopefully you guys can enjoy one another, right, for a couple hours, or get away, or take the kids to a movie, or let's do something. You don't have to always give, in lending and real estate, things come at pretty big ticket items, if you will. right? Pretty big expenses. And I think a lot of people go for the jugular on that. They're instantly like, I want a credit. I want to be compensated. I want this. I want that. Well, all of those things happen when you let someone else control the narrative, when you yourself didn't lean in and become the problem solver. And this can be trained on your team for sure if you have a team captain or somebody who's highly skilled. But otherwise, for sure, you don't ever go to a doctor's office and the nurse delivers all the news. It's always the doctor, especially if it's bad news. And so you want to make sure that, hey, bad news is something you don't run away from. It's something that you lean into and you are able to solve. A great other space is when a client is overwhelmed with their own problems. I don't know how to log into my account. I don't think I can get my HR to do that. I don't know how to find my pay stubs. Instead of, well, we need them, so you're going to have them to us by this date, lean into it and say, how can I help? Let me give you some ideas on my side. This, right? And then, hey, why don't you come to the office and I'll help you? I can't tell you how many times I've had a client sit right in front of me, and instead of me saying, your statement should be available online, I personally have gotten in with them with their permission and navigated everything for them. Going the extra mile, even in tough situations, does not ever go unnoticed. And if we know for a fact that tough situations are almost always going to be there, why wouldn't we always go the extra mile? And so if you're avoiding problems, if you're not tackling problems with the idea of prospecting for future business where people say, man, there were some bumps, but what a professional I just dealt with. What an incredible overall experience. How much care I had felt in the midst of that stress. And you do that for all parties, as many as you can reach, knowing that most anybody in the business doesn't ever take that extra mile step. I promise you, your business will blow up because of the problems that exist in it every single day, and you'll have a whole heck of a lot more enjoyment in the day-to-day business that for sure is riddled with problems that you get to solve. If this episode was helpful, I hope you share it, and we'll see you soon.